Hey everybody, I would like to welcome you to another episode of Pop Culture Gems. This is a series where Davis Green, talks to amazing creators, artists, cosplayers, voice actors, and so much more. If you like the interviews we do with our terrific guests, like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, the CFG channel. We release Pop Culture Gems on all podcast services, on all our main on all podcast services, as well on our main website, confreaksandgeeks.com. Today, I am talking to an incredible voice actor who has been in the game voice acting industry for about 20 years. She has been in so many memorable roles like the engineer Winry Rockbell in Full Metal Alchemist, Cammy in Street Fighters 4, 5, and 6, the pink acid hero Mina Ahito, aka Pinky in My Hero Academia, and the young Damien Desmond in Spy X Family. If you don't hear her voice in the series, she is probably crushing it as an ADR at Crunchyroll on shows like the new Solo Leveling, which is streaming at crunchyroll.com. Oh, that's a good shameless plug-in. I would like to welcome Caitlyn Glass to the show. How are you doing, Caitlyn?
I'm well. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, so finally, I'm so glad I'm able to talk to you. You've been on my list forever, and I'm definitely appreciate the time that you're giving me for this. So this is really awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Well, let's get down to brass tacks here. What is your story? Like, what got you into voice acting?
What got me into voice acting? Well, I have a degree in theater, and I always knew that I was going to be just an actor professionally. I did not pursue voice acting as my only means of supporting myself as an actor. It kind of just fell into my lap. I think I always knew I would like to try it as one of the many things an actor can do. But going to school in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in the early 2000s, that's where Funimation was based. So a lot of local talent end up working there. It just happens eventually, right? Your agent will get you an audition there, or an actor or director will drop your name there. For me, I ended up there when I was still in college. I had a semester left because a friend of mine became a sound engineer there. And he's like, "You like anime?" And I did. It was just like my casual hobby kind of thing to be into. He's like, "Come to the studio and I'll give you a tour." He even said, "I don't know how to get you an audition or work at all." He's like, "I'm just engineering. I don't know." I'm like, but I said, "I want to go. I just want to see where you work. It'll be cool." And on that tour, I met actor, and then he was directing Eric Vale, and he asked what I did, and when I said that I was an actor, he had me get into the booth right then and there, because there was no actor in at the time, had me say a couple of lines in something, and when I came out, he's like, "Give your information to our talent coordinator and you can work here." That was that. So I got hired on a tour that was on a Thursday, and I was back by Sunday, actually recording over the weekend because they needed to get the very first episode of Case Closed out the door. So my first work at Funimation was in Case Closed. And by the summer of that year, I landed a lead role in a show called Spiral. And it was hilarious and great and a wonderful learning experience. And by the fall of that year, actually late summer of that year, like I kind of did Spiral, and throughout the course of it was at the studio more often, and people heard me, and I had the opportunity to audition for Full Metal Alchemist. And I was cast in that and got going, I guess, in the late summer, early fall of 2004.
Oh my good. Wow. So that literally fell in your lap. Like, it wasn't even like your friend didn't like set you up to talk to meet this person.
Not at all. Yeah,
that is unbelievable. That is unbelievable. That is
it's
so
a blessing
crazy
for sure. Yeah.
How did and then you said your very first role was in was Case Closed. Who did you play in Case Closed?
I played kind of the flavor of the week. You know, it's a procedural, so it's a different cast every week, unless it's, the main crew, Conan and the gang. But yeah, the victim's girlfriend is who I played. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the episode, I don't want to spoil it because it's an excellent first episode of a series, and you can go and stream it on Crunchyroll.
Man, look at this. We're not even getting paid for this. Crunchyroll, but we're just, wow, nice. Man, the funny thing about, like, it's funny for me, every time I watch Case Closed, I actually introduced that to my mom, to anime, because she didn't understand why I liked anime so much. And then she was like, "Oh, this is Murder She Wrote," and I'm like, "Oh my god, you basically just ruined this series for me." Now every time I look at it, it's always Murder She Wrote for me. With
Murder
Angela
She Wrote is a
Lansbury.
great show.
It's
love
an amazing
Murder,
show. Yeah, it's an amazing show. But now it's like I'm looking at Case Closed as Angela Lansbury, and I'm just like, I can't. No, thanks. But you came up you came into Funimation during the significant growth of anime, of anime series coming to the U.S. Like, were you familiar with the anime scene before you started voice acting? With it?
Yeah. I wasn't like 100% knowing absolutely every anime that had ever come over, or even too much about voice actors yet. I watched anime in high school with my friends, and then kind of got away from it in college simply because I was busy, like doing college stuff. And I was in theater, so we had rehearsal all the time. But by the end of my college years, I'd met some friends there who were also into anime. So we kind of started watching anime again. Namely, we would, go to class and do stuff, and then go to someone's apartment and watch what was going on in Dragon Ball, because it was like really good stuff at the time. I think it was like the Cell Saga tournament and stuff with Boo and Majin Buu and all that. And then we'd go back because we had rehearsal. So, and the guys I was watching with are like my colleagues now. So Sean Gann, fellow ADR director, Anthony Bowling, ADR director, and also actors as well. So it's kind of fun that was our little college upbringing with anime. So like I knew that there was a scene, and I was reading like New Type magazine to know what new shows were coming out. I was not really into illegal downloading, and I'm not just saying that because piracy is bad, and it is. Please don't do that. But that wasn't my thing. Like I didn't even try. I would just watch whatever I could watch legally, and there was a Blockbuster near where I lived that actually had tons of anime, tons of it. So thank goodness for ADV films, because it was mostly ADV stuff. But they had such a massive catalog in the early 2000s. So I was watching a lot of that, and I was watching whatever else was on Toonami at the time. So that's like Furikuri and The Big O and Blue Gender and Inuyasha and et cetera. It was that era. Yeah, and I'd watch them, and then I'd watch them again and again if they were on. So that's mainly what I was watching when I got into it as a job.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't believe I like ADV. That brings me back. I'm so old. But yeah, New Type magazine. I mean, I do remember how like that was a really expensive magazine. It was like $70 just for one of those things, or something like that.
If you got like the Japanese one, probably, because it would have been imported. But I was getting like New Type USA, which was still not cheap. It's still like a $30 magazine. And in like 2004, that's a lot for a magazine. But excuse me. But it came with a DVD every month, provided by ADV Films, and most of the time from ADV. And it had free episodes of stuff to watch. So maybe 1 or 2 episodes of whatever their new thing was. And it was dubbed as well. So I thought that was really cool. And I got exposed to a lot of shows. Whether or not I liked them and kept up with them was one thing, but it was just really neat to see what's going on in Japan, see all the really cool art in the magazine, and watch some, well, not free, I paid for it, but get some anime samples, I suppose.
Right. I mean, and like, I know like during that time though too, it was like this was still like the infantile stages of the mass expansion of what anime is today. So I think most of the time during that time, it was like you see a show, well, unless if it was not on Adult Swim or whatever, it's like if you get something, then you just got to watch it. You got to check it out for yourself.
Yeah, whatever there is, that you watch that. Exactly. But you'd read about something in a magazine, and you're right. If it wasn't the big new show, like Full Metal Alchemist, for example, which at that time was consistently on the cover of New Type magazine. If it wasn't that, or maybe like Gundam Seed or something, it wasn't going to be on TV. So you're just crossing your fingers that in a year or so, you might be able to get to see it, licensed by somebody. Who else was around at the time? Geneon and Pioneer,
Bandai,
and then ADF, Bandai, and
Anime Works, I believe,
and Funimation. So,
and Funimation,
that place,
the big one, the VidCore, there we go.
The big one,
yes, and like prior to all of that, prior to all that, well, not really prior, but you've been doing like a mix of video games, cartoons, and anime for almost 20 years now. Is there like a genre that you like to do more than the other, or are they all kind of like the same to you?
They're not the same. They're definitely not the same. It kind of depends on what type of video game you're doing and what role you're cast in that game. So a lot of the games I've done have been localizations of Japanese games, so working on them feels very similar to working on anime. You just don't have a picture to work with a lot of the time. But I feel like unless you're one of the key players, right, like one of the party, it's hard to follow the thread of the story. It can get very convoluted, and because a game, it's linear, but there are choices that you can make as a player, and you can go off this way, you can go off that way, you can go off that way. So recording it is a little bit trickier in your mind because it's not just chronological. It's like chronological up to a point, and then you got to follow this path, and then you got to back it up and go, okay, well, if you hadn't done that, there's this and all the lines that go with it. It can be really hard and kind of grueling. And like I said, you don't have picture to watch to kind of keep you involved or a soundtrack. That's what's really cool about dubbing anime is that you get to see it all first. So everything that you hear from the Japanese actors and everything that you see and hear from the sound design and the music really inspire the performance. That being said, I guess with video games, it's more of a blank slate, and you just are a little bit more creative in that way, though you still will have the Japanese to go off of. I have done some game. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, but like, are you saying like, so like when you're actually in the booth itself on anime? 'Cause I didn't know that y'all actually saw your character talk.
Oh, absolutely. We have to. You must. It's not just some words on a page. The reason the director is there is to help guide the actors into the right read and performance to fit the animation. So you have to see the animation. The script has been adapted from the translation to match the way the mouths are moving. So it is 100% necessary to see the picture. So we always watch it in Japanese before we record. Not the whole episode start to finish, but you watch the moment that you're working on at the time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, but that was kind of cut you off though. But it's very interesting though. Like, but I mean, I know with gaming itself, you are basically creating a character from the ground up itself. So, yeah, you really can't see yourself, your character up in front of you. But like I said, you're Cammy in a fighting game, and you're doing all just the imagining of all the different kinds of the not just the phrases, but like the attacks, like getting hit or the little oomph kind of deals. Like how much of that is involved. Is involved.
Well, it's all me. It's not someone else. It's not someone else. I do have the Japanese actress as a guide. And that isn't because I need to mimic her performance so much as I need to match her timing, right? Like she would record first. All of the Japanese actors would have recorded first. And so the length of the file, the sound file, the game is built around, the timing of that. So each language needs to match that. As technology has progressed, we've been able to get away from some of that. Meaning the English voices can kind of do our own thing, quote unquote, a little bit more. But still, I listen to her, and I am inspired by what she's up to. And in games, though, I will say you usually have a lot more folks involved in crafting your performance. You're there as an actor to perform, but especially with something like Street Fighter, I've got my director there and the engineer there. But then on the line, there's one or two people from Capcom, and then like a client representative who speaks Japanese and English. And they're there to handle any rewriting of the script so that it's all very official if we need to change something to fit. Because with something like Street Fighter that's been around for like 30 years, you have to be very specific. You can't just on a whim go, this doesn't work. We're going to make her say this instead. You need Capcom's approval. So there are a lot of people listening and picking apart what you're up to. And, you'll do everything is lumped into similar types of stuff, right? So we'll do cutscenes one day, and then we'll do some of the fighting at the end of the day so I don't get worn out. And the next day we'll do some story, and Cammy will show up in various characters' story. So you got to do, here's Cammy in, in Chun-Li's story, and here's Cammy in Luke's story, and here's Cammy in etc. Do all those. And when it comes to the fighting, it'll be like, okay, here are 5 or 6 light punch attacks. And I hear the Japanese and I immediately repeat my version, 1 or 2 options for each of the options given to me. So that when you're playing, you're not just hearing the same punch sound every time she throws a light punch or, a hard kick or something. There are multiple ways to hear that noise happen.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And then, of course, all the famous ones that like Spiral Arrow and Cannon Spike and Cannon Drill and Execute and all of that. Yeah.
Wow, man. It sounds like that's a lot more than what you would have to do normally in the gaming side than what you would do for anime. So that's incredible. Jeez. Jesus, I didn't know there was that much like politics too behind it. So that's really crazy. And I know you're, like I said before, I know you're very busy. But is there something that you like to do that like unwinds you from your normal day-to-day scheduling?
If I have the time when I get home, I like to unwind watching Korean dramas. I watch a lot of K-dramas. I started watching them during the pandemic, and I've kept up with that habit, though I'm not as free. I don't have as much free time anymore. I used to be watching like 4 or 5 different ones at a time. Right now, I'm just got one. Yeah, just one. So that's it. The main thing I'll do is that. I like to go to the theater. I love to go to the symphony. Those are the main things. If I've got the free time and I'm going to go and do, it's that. If I'm free time and I stay at home, it's hang out with my husband and the dogs and K-dramas.
It's hilarious. Like my girlfriend also like, oh my God, like try to get me into K-dramas, and I'm just like, I just don't get it. These scenarios are so weird. It's so odd to me. It's so
They're
awful.
not any weirder than anime. Are you kidding me?
That is true. But you know what? It's fair. Weirder. That is fair. You're totally right. But it's just weird because it's like it's live action and you just see that in the same scenario. It's like, I don't know if that works for me as much. It seems kind of icky to me, but it's hilarious. But no, there are really good ones. There are some that I admit were like, wow, okay, I got to watch all of this before I go crazy. So no, you're totally right. Yeah. So no, do you know about the I love going to like symphonies too. Like, do you know like there's something that's going on in the Meyerson soon about like for what's called Cowboy Bebop Big Band, like a big band for Cowboy Bebop thing. This like over at the Meyerson. I was just like, wow, okay. I love symphony. I used to be in the orchestra for like 10 years. So like I do that all the time. So
that's great. Yeah, I haven't checked too much into things that are visiting at the Meyerson. I mostly just follow like what the DSO specifically are doing, the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, because we're patrons there. So and their season thing, it didn't say anything about Cowboy Bebop at the symphony, but that sounds really cool. I know they had the One Piece thing there last year. I didn't get to go to it, but that sounded pretty neat too. Oh
yeah, no, like I think it's like sometime in March or something. I'm like, okay, I gotta go. There's no, especially it's big band. I love big band. So yeah, there you go. And do you have a personal fandom yourself that you like, something that you like to collect or do, or something that you enjoy?
It's hard working in anime because I collect so many things based on the shows that I am directing or that I'm in, or the games that I'm directing or in. So it's mainly that. That's mainly what I'm collecting. My husband and I have a healthy designer toy collection, so like vinyl figures and things like that, and not just anime ones, but other pretty great ones. I don't know. We're definitely collectors at my house.
You are an ADR and you have done over hundreds of shows, and I don't know how many, and I know you were doing a streak, I think since 2015. You were doing things like ADR and voice acting for 20 shows a year at point, like over 20 shows a year. I bet you have like racks, like racks of just different kinds of things that you have done.
Yeah, I have to limit myself to what I get. I try to just stick to figures. I will usually just get figures that I voice, not shows that I'm in. And then I am looking shows that I'm in. I'm typically looking for really cool art or something very special, maybe from Japan, to just keep as a memento from that experience. But yeah, I got a lot of things.
I'm just like, okay, you could easily probably fill like 8 rooms of the stuff that you've been, especially like.
I hope not.
Well, yeah, like Full Metal Alchemist alone and all the, and like MHA. Oh, golly. All right. And when you started your career in voice acting, like you came out strong with series like Detective Conan and Full Metal Alchemist. Like when you initially started, did you imagine this would be the career you wanted to do? Like,
no, I didn't. I really thought it was just a gig. It was just something that I would do until I did something else. I had plans for my theatrical life. I wanted to go to graduate school. I wanted to go study abroad and do Shakespeare. But I wasn't planning to do that immediately upon graduation. So I just thought this is a thing to do so I can use my degree and make a living by acting. And then when it's time to go to grad school, I'll do that and whatever. But things just really took off. So I stuck with it, and it went from being like a gig to this is my job. And now 20 years later, it's my career.
I mean, like, it just feels like it just seems really interesting that like especially the way you got introduced into it, and then you just like, you just improved. You just constantly just get improved and improved from there on, and just started crushing it. And now you're like you're a big figurehead now at this point.
Wild,
like,
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's incredible that like it just all that just from that one opportunity, which is really great. It's really great to hear. And one of the things that I admire about you, like I'm just saying, and not trying to get your big ego, but but like there is how multi-talented you are. Like not only do you have like a successful career in voice acting, but you also have established yourself as an audio director in several series. Like, how were you introduced to deciding to become an ADR?
I really didn't think of ADR directing as a career similar to voice acting. I'm like, I don't know, I'm just going to do it. It was that I really enjoyed being at Funimation. I liked being around the studio, and I wanted to find a way to be there more, but legitimately. You can only be there as an actor as often as you're cast, and you really just interact with your director and your engineer and whoever you might cross paths with in like a break room. So I just asked my same friend who brought me there on the tour, like, hey, how do you become a director here? Do you think that I would be any good at that? And he pointed me in the direction of Justin Cook, as you know him as Yusuke Urameshi, and right now he's Kirishima in MHA, and he's my boss. And back then he was the boss too. And I just ended up in his office and told him that I was interested. Did he think that I could try it out? How would I train? And he just very easily and simply was like, yeah, you could do it. He just told me that I could. I'm like, oh, okay. So that was not the same as being hired. It was more like being invited and allowed to come and train, which I had to do on my own in my free time. I wasn't paid. It was just come on and learn from the other directors who at the time were all contract as well. So they weren't being paid to train me. They were being paid to make the anime. So I learned from Mike McFarland and Chris Bevins and Zach Bolton and all sorts of people. Colleen Klinkenbeard, who had arrived on the scene maybe 6 months prior to me. And she was already directing as well, of course, from Full Metal Alchemist. And I trained for I don't even know how long. And then they started asking me to fill in for folks when they would be gone. So I was mostly substituting and assistant directing for a little bit. And then they offered me a contract, and not ironically, but it's oddly enough, it was for Case Closed. So the first stuff I directed was also the first show that I ever voice acted in. So I did Case Closed, and I worked on Negima, and I worked on the first One Piece movie that we did, which was not movie 1, but movie 8, the Alabasta movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then they gave me my own other contracts, One Piece, and what else? My first show was in 2007, and it was called Suzuka. And it's a sports romance. And that was my first full show that I did. And maybe I did one other after that before I got more on High School Host Club, which is, pretty epic. So.
Wow, very awesome. And so from the time of when you decided to, talk to Justin Cook to get into your ADR role to how established were you doing your voice acting from the day? Like, was it like a year or was it a long period of time? Or?
I started voice acting in early 2004, January 2004, and I was directing by, I want to say, the fall of 2005. So it wasn't even like a full 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Wow. Okay, cool, man. it's just so funny. And also before the holidays, I talked to Marissa Duran, and they said nothing but great things about your direction in ADR work in Horimiya and also in Hell's Paradise. And I'm just but then I was thinking to myself, what are some of the challenges of you being in ADR of the series? What are the challenges of the day to day of directing everyone for the series?
I also want to be clear, I didn't direct Hell's Paradise.
Okay.
That's Mike McFarland, but I did direct Horimiya, both seasons of it. The challenges of an ADR director are namely, well, gosh, there are a lot. You're asking me is on Friday after a week of work, and I'm tired.
You're fried.
Yeah. So we do a lot. At Crunchyroll, the directors also cast their shows, which is really nice, at other studios that aren't Crunchyroll and then Funimation before us. They have a casting director who does all of that. So I think it's really great to be the one who's going to be working with the actors and getting to choose who you're working with and really craft the ensemble that way. So that's job number 1 is casting. The other challenge is, it's all a collaborative thing. I really don't feel that any ADR director should take full responsibility for the way the show sounds, because before I even get started, there's a writing team who's probably even watched it before I've had a chance to watch it. They've adapted the translation into the script that we work with, and then I get it. So the main challenge is communicating with all of the teams to make the finished product the best it can be. So I need to communicate with the writers as we're going along and let them know these are the types of changes that I'm having to make on the fly. These are the adjustments that you could be making in the next episode before I get the script so that it works more easily for me. There are challenges in regards to stuff that could be lost in translation. The Japanese really love their wordplay jokes, so making things like that make sense, or any sort of cultural stuff that to a Japanese person is immediately understood, but to us is less understood or not understood at all. Figuring out how do we make that work? And then the biggest, I guess, challenge to all of that work is the time constraints, really. Because we have a very hungry audience out there that wants their anime and they want it now. One thing that was really nice about the early 2000s is, like you said, everyone was just so happy to get whatever they got. They're like, oh, this is great. Let me consume this. But now in the world of streaming, enough is never enough, and they always want the next thing. And we're also trying to combat piracy, and the best way to do that is to put things out in the simulcast way. So it's at least there in Japanese at the same time, in Japanese with subtitles here at the same time as it is in Japan. And then we've got to dub out within 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And sometimes we can do it at the same day as Japan. It just depends on materials, and, they're under time constraints as well. So that's the hardest thing. And we're working on typically 2 shows at a time on the regular.
Oh my God.
So I'm putting out 2 episodes a week of 2 very different series. And I may also be in some form of post-production on an older show or pre-production on an incoming show. And in my position as a senior voice director, I'm also doing things like new director training and just other stuff. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like the day to day of that just sounds insane. Like, have you ever juggled that and like ever done like a voice acting role while doing your regular day to day as an ADR?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We would have assistants. I'd have an assistant come in and run the directing sessions while I popped out to do some voice acting. Or nowadays we just do it at night. So I may work 10 to 6 and then stick around in the evening to record Damien, for example, on Spy Family. That's how that works. That's the life of an ADR director. Direct all day, and if you still want to act, and we all still want to act, it happens at night.
Do you ever sleep? I mean, Jesus, that sounds amazingly crazy.
Not enough. But right now, I am not sleeping a lot because we have a puppy, and then we also have our older dog, who's very much a senior dog and needs lots of extra attention. So nowadays, if I'm not getting sleep, it's because of the dogs. I've really learned to, as best I can, leave work at work and come home and be present with my family. There are sometimes things I have to do, like I have a voice acting career that isn't anime related, that isn't Crunchyroll related. So I have to carve out the time, usually in my mornings, but sometimes in my evenings, just to do auditions and research for those auditions for other things, commercials and other games and Western cartoons and stuff like that. Nice. So, yeah, I try to leave anime at work, but then there are conventions, of course, and I love to go and celebrate everything and meet the fans and talk about all of this stuff. Because like I told you, I like anime. I don't think I would still be doing this if I didn't, right?
That's very true.
Yeah.
But wow, you are very incredible. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like I mean, it's just, and also does ADR even do any kind of work, let alone with like localization at all, or do they, or is that a whole completely different group? Like
do I, as a director, specifically?
Like, I guess with like, well, like you were saying about syncing and making sure that the scripts were matching, or was matching in rhythm to what the translations are. Is that a matter of localization, or is that something completely different?
Localization technically is like making the product digestible for a Western audience, for a local audience. Mm-hmm. So that has more to do with the content. And I suppose the adaptation literally of the language, not it doesn't speak to the timing of things or how an actor performs, I guess, or how I have them adjust their performance. I'm not thinking of, I don't know how to explain it. I don't think about localizing. That's okay. I guess that isn't on my brain. That's on the brains of people who are steps before me, like before it comes to my booth. It doesn't mean I don't think about the audience, but I recognize that my audience are English speaking or want to be, and they consume their media via a dub, and it's my job to make it seem as though this cartoon was produced in English in the first place. That's what I want. Like, that's how smooth and seamless I want it to be. That's why I say the tricky stuff is like things that might be lost in translation or things that are extremely cultural. How do we present them just through the language in a way that makes sense to the audience? Because we can't alter the animation in any way at all.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And you've said in your Instagram, one of your Instagram posts, that the series, the new series that's out right now, Solo Leveling, maybe like the most ambitious thing you have ever worked on. Why is that?
I think the hype, because of the hype involved, and it is worthy of it. I'll tell you what. To be at the head of that is not something I take lightly, and I'm very serious about it, but also very excited. And I've been working a long time to have a project of this size and of this nature. And, it's this established IP that's very beloved around the world. And I recognize that, and I want to do it justice. And I've read it, and I think that it's just so spectacular and so groundbreaking when it arrived on the scene. And, I've had my hands on some other pretty high profile things over the years. Like I directed some of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I directed all of Fruits Basket, the reboot, 3 seasons in a movie. But I feel like those things came to me. Someone had already set them up, like Fruits Basket already had a cast and I just had to fill in some blanks. And same with Full Metal Alchemist. It was like Mike and Colleen built the thing and then I just had to kind of carry it along. Solo leveling to me feels more, I don't know, I'm feeling the work that I'm doing, if that makes sense. But I'm also really loving the work that I'm doing. And I can't wait for everyone to hear it, by the way. Right now, it is just streaming in Japanese. So stay tuned for an exact date on when the dub will be available. But you're going to like it. You're going to like it.
I'm definitely looking forward to it. I watched the first episode last week on Crunchyroll. Another shameless plug on Crunchyroll, and I was like, wow, okay, because for me, I'm very impatient. So like usually when I saw the first episode, I'm like, wow, this was a very good first episode. Let me see how's the rest of the series like. So I start reading it. And I was like, oh my God.
Good.
It is insane.
It's so good.
Yeah. And so I am looking forward to seeing that animation into like, and what's amazing to me is that, now correct me if I'm wrong, is this a webtoon or was this initially
it was a manhwa,
light novel?
a manhwa and a webtoon and a light novel, all of the above. So it was a novel. Wow. And then the novel was given, manhwa form. And it was, of course, online as a web comic. And you can also buy it in physical copies of it as well. Though in English, the whole story hasn't been released as physical books, but it has been released in English on, I think it's just the Webtoon app or one of those where, you pay for chapters. So I think that's really cool. And it's also wonderful that so many Korean stories are being adapted from manhwa into anime. And this will be my second one to work on, actually. But it's awesome because I already told you I love K-dramas and Korean culture it's weird. I can't seem to do things and have them just be my hobby. They will eventually become part of my work. So K-dramas and K-pop were like, hey, let's have this hobby. And now I'm like, hey, Korean language is really interesting. Let me start studying that. And then now Korean stuff starts showing up at Crunchyroll. And I'm like, I'm interested in it, of course, because it's my hobby and my interest otherwise. And, now it's my job. Yeah, but it's been great.
I hope it doesn't like spoil it for you. Like if it's like once this becomes your job, you're like, what, I'm kind of over it or anything. I hope you still enjoy. Like,
I don't think so. It's nice. It's nice having insight into the culture because it's been my hobby and I've been studying the language and the culture for a bit, and it's nice getting the exposure to it at work is pretty cool. So
yeah, that's great. And I know, like I've said earlier in the interview, like you've been the voice of Cammy since Street Fighter 4. For the longest of time, I assumed that they chose someone from the UK to do the voice. I didn't even know until I was like, "What? She was a part of that?" It's like, cool. Like yes. when you read the role for Cammy, I mean, I would love to know, like, did you just bring like an authentic British accent, and they were like, apparently,
wow. I auditioned with the accent. Yes, the accent was a requirement for the audition. I read for the part, honestly thinking that I would not get it because, like you, I thought they'll just cast a real British person because I knew the directors and I knew that it was all being done in Los Angeles and like they have access to British actors. Surely some other person is going to nail this, but they sent it to me, so I will read. And I booked it anyway. So I'm so grateful. But yes, I do. That is a very high compliment. Thank you. I do hear that a lot when people come up to the tables at conventions and they're there to have me sign their game or their arcade stick or something like that. And I start talking and they're like, "You're not British." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry." And I'll put on the voice for him because like, you're a Cammy fan. So let me just, do it for you and not ruin.
Did you train at all in any way on this role, like for it, or like did it just come natural to you?
Train for it to do the role. A lot of actors just work on an accent throughout their accents, many accents. And then if you're a voice actor, even more so. So yes, I'd used the British accent on the stage before and had studied dialects in various classes and things along the way. And then some people just have a knack for it. And sometimes they just have a knack for particular accents, not all accents. So I don't know how long I'd been doing a British accent, but that was maybe my first time to do it professionally and be paid for it. So that's pretty great. That's pretty great that Cammy is what did it. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm on the outside of this because it's very, I feel that it's very rare for someone with a like American to go and have a British accent and get a role for a British role, because usually you see it the other way around. You see a lot of British accents, all the time. I'm just like, wow, okay, so it is possible, just incredibly rare. So, wow, I love it though. No, I love. Have you played yourself in any of the Street Fighters, like 4, 5, or 6?
Yes, I played 4 a lot, obviously because it was the first one and it was so cool to be in it. So I played the multiple versions of 4. I'm also DiCapri, so when she came along in like 4 Ultra, I think, or Ultimate, that's pretty fun to be in scenes with myself and fighting against myself. I played 5, and I haven't played 6 a lot, which is unfortunate because I know it's like really awesome, but I just don't have any time. I've played it at the arcade, actually. Like we have a few of those free play arcades and stuff here in Dallas, if you don't know about them. And so I think that was the first place, actually. They had a PS5 set up instead of all these arcade machines and pinball machines, but then they knew like people are going to want to play the new Street Fighter, so here it is, like the PS5 and a TV on the wall. I'm like, heck yeah. So that was my first exposure to actually playing the new one.
That's cool. Isn't DiCapri Russian? Like she
is.
Oh, okay, so did you have a Russian accent too for DiCapri?
Yeah, of course I did.
But Caitlyn, thank you so much for geeking out. It was really awesome talking to you. I really loved. Thank you I know with your hectic schedule, I really appreciate it. It's really awesome that we got in touch. And folks, you could, if you like the interview that we've done with Caitlyn, like this one, you can also check it out on any podcast services out there. We're on Apple, Google Play, everywhere. Or just go to our main website, confreaksandgeeks.com, to check out the full library of other awesome interviews like this one. So this is Davis signing out. Y'all, take it easy.